Mr. Mohammed. You actually boosted my spirits because I managed to see the font. So without using the glasses. So I'm good now with the, because I felt so bad wearing glasses. I'm new into this world, 10 months or something wearing glasses. And so it's a sign, for me, it's a sign of aging. But with him looking at the screen, I managed to read most of the slides without glasses, so it's okay. Now, anyway, thank you so much. I enjoyed the whole session. It's somehow, there's some linkages, I think. But the single-use medical devices is, we have a clear, I think, WHO policy on that, and it's been in our handbooks. We have a regulation of medical devices, WHO book on regulation of medical devices. It's a rather old one, but it has a whole paragraph on single-use medical devices and the regulatory requirements for that. And I invite everyone to go and see that. Now I thank the speakers and I open the floor for questions from the audience. Yes, here, please.
My question to Mohammed. When you are saying about the pre-processing for the single device or multi-device, okay, through our local CSSD, which is in the hospital, do you have, as a SFD, any regulation, for the CSSD? Is it doing their part right, or no? You are not interfering in the CSSD.
Can you raise your voice, please?
Yes, please.
I said,
Yeah.
regarding the reprocessing of single device or multi through our CSSD local, which is inside the hospital, do you have, as a SFD, a regulation for the CSSD?
Now, our regulation is just dealing with the establishment. So we just go when we think about this practice.
Get the mic closer to you.
Is it not? When we, our regulation is, particular to the establishment. So when we think about this, to regulate this practice, we invite the people who's in charge in the hospital, like CST person, and we discuss with them about this practice and the risk related. So at the end, as you see, in the presentation, we communicate with them about our opinion on that practice, and they already also agreed, and we just give him our recommendation and send that to the high level administration in the hospital and in the Ministry of Health to apply this practice. And we stop all the health establishment that doing the reprocessing. This is what we can do, but we didn't go to the CST department and enforce it.
I will comment on that. Interesting to note, on the US FDA side, they actually expect a manufacturer who's reprocessing. So let's say it's a third party. They expect that third party reprocessor to go through the same regulatory submissions that the original manufacturer went through. And I applaud the approach that Saudi FDA is taking, because there are a lot of risks with the practice.
You were just, okay, go ahead.
I think it was very good to see the attempts that SFD has taken in this initiative. I really appreciate. But just some questions. Can we get a CE mark for the reprocessing products? Or US FDA like approvals? Simply speaking, this becomes a new product, as US FDA has also defined, means they will require a registration. And what to talk about the cleaning validation and the sterilization validations, plus under the qualified supervision for these activities, if this is manageable at the hospital level. And secondly, it's not only the information to the patient, but it is an informed consent should be the minimum requirement. But I would say, who will warranty? Is the MS of the hospital will give the warranty for such kind of a reprocessed product, which is designed and manufactured for single use? So who will take the quality responsibility? So if the hospital management is not taking this responsibility, I don't think this should be moved forward for such a thing. And beside this, there was another question for single-use items. When we use a single-use medical device, usually, as I've also seen at various end-user points, once the package is open, and maybe sometimes it is kept and not used or delayed use. So is there any consideration for a lag time? So once the package is open, because the integrity is lost of that package. So for how long it can be kept, and under what conditions it should be then kept?
Regarding the CE certificate, if I understand your question, well, of any reprocessor company, as I mentioned in the presentation, we ban this practice. So we communicate with some establishments here that already doing this practice. So we also don't allow any to sell or import any reprocessed product in our. So we will not accept, I think, any. Okay. Also regarding the informing the patient about the risk or the potential risk that related to that practice, I think this is the role of the physician and the hospital. So we just when we hold the conference and communicated with the people in the Ministry of Health and in the healthcare facility, we just stay with them, and at the end we agreed with them about the to ban this practice. It's good for our hospital, and we inform him that you should aware the patient about this practice. And our role just to stop the product in the market. So at this point, we stop.
I just wanted that you should put in your recommendation one more point, that the head of the hospital or institution should warranty that reprocessed product. The matter will be resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me comment on that. I mean, it's really interesting. We do testing for both companies that do single-use devices, but we do some testing for people who reprocess single-use devices as well. And I think you make an excellent point that there should be someone responsible, an owner of liability. And that's why I think the practice of expecting the manufacturer to own that if there's a third-party reprocessor, that they have the same obligations as the original device manufacturer. I think that keeps that liability possibility right in play. It's fascinating to see what happens in this space, though. And again, I applaud SFDA's approach. I see manufacturers more and more building senescence mechanisms, certain ways that their device will fail so that they can't be reprocessed. And they may have engineering controls or different mechanisms to render the device useless after a certain number of use, even after a single use, just to protect against that. And then you have third-party reprocessors who are almost in an arms race type fashion trying to beat those mechanical senescence systems. So I think unless you have a real defined process for this, I think it's better to avoid the practice. And I think the conclusions of the study are right on.
Yeah, we have three. You go to Alan first. Mike, please. Well, we'll come to you.
Right. I wear two hats. I've been a manufacturer and I've been a regulator. Let me start with the regulator. Regulators hate reprocessed devices. We try to write our regulations so it doesn't happen. The US, you gave me an example. Europe does the same. It says if you reprocess a medical device, you are a manufacturer of a new medical device. You have to go through all the same quality assurance, controls, essential principles. You can't escape that obligation. And you are the manufacturer. Therefore, enforcement action is taken against you. If you happen to be a hospital, that applies to you. You become a manufacturer, and you have all the you should have all the regulatory oversight that goes with that. So that's where I, as a regulator, come from. But then we look at those statistics. I don't know what the proportion would be in the UK or Europe, but I know there would be some hospitals that reprocess, like it or not. And to my mind, if that is discovered, and if that came to litigation, then they would be liable to any errors with that. So I sort of think this is an area where there's a difference between the position, the stance the regulations like to take, and real life. And that's the reason we're talking about it, because it's very easy to write a regulation that says it will not go on. But the world talks about it. It's not just Saudi Arabia. You could have this conversation in America or in Europe with the new regulation, the new medical device regulation. It's been discussed, but the regulations are still taking the stance I've just described, and probably still knowing that it will still go on in some hospitals in some parts of the world. So I said I'd got two hats on this. Right, my second hat, manufacturer. Now, I manufactured baby incubators and warmers, and there were two things that I used to have a problem on. One was that in America, and it probably exists elsewhere, there is what is called grey market disposables. So I would design my product, it would go with thermometers, removable things, leads, and the like. When they failed, because they all had a short life, the hospital would go and buy a replacement from somebody else who didn't know anything about the design. I could never stop that. I tried it, but it happened. The real life, it happened. The other thing I had is I would have my staff would come to me and they'd say, Alan, we've just got this big order for 20 incubators from a US hospital. What I would like to do as a salesman, these are still working, they've not failed. I'd like us to ship them off free of charge to a country that doesn't have any incubators. And I'd say that's absolutely, I understand why you're doing it, but within my quality management system, if you bring that device back into my factory, which you'd have to, if you wanted me to take ongoing responsibility for it, it would have to go through all my quality management testing to make sure it still worked and performed as it should do. and that would cost me more than making a new one. So please go and bury it. And again, I'm not the only company in the world that sort of have it. So there is always this conflict. But in my regard, the regulations are set up to ensure that the manufacturer has obligations, and those obligations are limited to what they say, how the product will perform and its lifetime. So, two conflicting views, if you like.
Thank you.
Well, Jeff, you want to comment?
Well, I would just, to complement what Dr. Kent was saying, that there are real drivers, there are real cost drivers that some hospitals are drawn to. It's just a question of making sure that those practices are really sound. And I think, again, the approach is wise.
Yeah, we have at the back, and then we come to Ojaz. Sorry, he raised his hand first, and then we come to Doctor.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Zaid Al-Khamali from Saudi FDA. My question to Jeff, if a test carried out by a third party or Nelson Lab, let's say, how would the FDA validate the results from there? The second question, which kind of test FDA carry out, if there is any?
I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. Could you hold that really close?
Okay. I mean, if a test carried out by third party or Nelson Lab, how would the FDA, and the results should come to FDA, obviously, how would the FDA validate the results coming from the third party? This is the first question. The second question is, which kind of test FDA carried out by itself, if there is any, I mean?
So I think your first question is, how does the FDA respond to testing done by a third party?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah,
And
very well. In fact, that's very typical. I would say more and more U.S. manufacturers in particular are outsourcing their testing in favor of their product development efforts. So more and more they are hiring more engineers, and they're focusing much more on getting product through the pipeline to market. And because of that, there's less and less expertise at the manufacturing location relative to testing. And so it's very common for a third-party provider like Nelson Labs to provide that testing to FDA. I think that also provides a little bit of insulation for a manufacturer. Having their product tested by an independent third party can be somewhat advantageous because you have that sort of separate verification of the product effectiveness. Let's see, and your second question?
Is there any kind of test that FDA carry out for medical devices?
Yeah, actually they do. They do a number of tests at FDA. I don't know, theirs might be more on the market surveillance side. I know they do product sterility testing, for instance. I believe they do some bioburden testing. They'll detain a product at a U.S. port, for instance, and if they find a problem, they'll put the product on detention based on one of their tests, and then require that each batch of that product is then tested going forward. They don't do high volumes of testing. They just do some surveillance testing.
Okay, before I go to Ojaz, please note that we are now distributing the USB sticks that contains all the presentations plus some background document, photos, and list of participants and so many other issues. So please make sure that you have one before you leave the room, and everyone has one. Okay, Ojaz.
Thank you. Question to you, Jeffrey, or rather first with a comment. Probably I have used Nelson Laboratories extensively for almost 5 years in the beginning of my career, and you guys have a great staff. Being an engineer, getting educated in biocompatibility and all the microbiology was fantastic learning. My question to you is not about single-use reprocessing, because that is already a dark area for me, but reusable devices and cleaning and validation of reusable devices, because there are so many variations going on. The methods used by different hospitals, the techniques for sterilization used by different hospitals, and even cleaning solutions used by different hospitals. So how do you actually help clients to determine the best or even validate their cleaning instructions?
Well, you've highlighted a very real problem, and that is there are so many different reusable products. These are products designed for reuse, and there are so many different solutions, cleaning solutions, from enzymatic to peroxide-based, and then each device has a very unique set of instructions. Add to that many times those individuals working in central processing capacities, they are on the lower educated side of the spectrum, and they're asked to read these complicated instructions that vary device by device, and they're reprocessing thousands of devices. So this is a very real problem. And when we help companies with the validation of reprocessing for reusable devices, it really focuses a lot on the instructions for use. Because first of all, if you can normalize those, if you can get them into a standard set of cleaning solutions, it improves the likelihood of the cleaning being effective. So that's one way. But oftentimes it's very device dependent as well. And so again, just going through that evaluation of making sure that the instructions are readable, are followable, and then that we are using standard tools and systems for that cleaning and disinfection. That's really the key. But it is a very dynamic area. Plus, I read a study not too long ago that said when, this was a study done by, I think it was NIH. They looked at when a hospital followed the instructions to the T. They went exactly as instructed on the instructions for use. Even then, there was a percentage of devices that weren't effectively cleaned or disinfected. So it's a very difficult environment, and it requires very careful thinking to make sure that that's done properly.
Yes, and then now you add reprocessing of single-use devices to existing one. It just complicates the situation big time.
When you think about single-use devices and the compatibility, earlier in my presentation I talked about materials characterization. When you start exposing single-use devices to new chemical moieties, the potential to create new leachables and extractables, it's a very real secondary concern, in addition to the biological and functional concerns that were so well highlighted in the previous presentation. So I think it's very careful, and I like the approach that the SFDA is taking. There are companies who do this, who pride themselves on reprocessing. It's just very important that those validation steps are done and you understand the full impact on the product.
Thank you. Dr. Fahd?
Thank you very much, Fahd al-Muammar. Question to Jeff. From an industrial point of view, can Nelson Lab test a product to say this is a good quality? That is very wide. From, say, surgical gloves to procedure pack. Can you give such a certificate?
It's a good question, and we can. It depends a little bit. Any testing laboratory, and I'll speak in general because WHO has to be very careful about not promoting any service, so I'll just speak generally about laboratories. Is that okay? The approach that a laboratory must take in making that type of an assessment would be to rely on, first, compendial criteria. So if the standard has acceptance criteria for the product, then a laboratory can make a definitive statement about if that meets that compendial requirement. Beyond that, if there isn't a compendial expectation or clear black and white criteria, then it is often difficult for the laboratory to make conclusive assumptions. They can represent the result, and they often will give that back to the medical device manufacturer to incorporate into their risk assessment to say, based on this data, based on the use of the product and the benefits of the product relative to the potential risks, we would argue that this is an acceptable risk level. That's not something that a laboratory can always do, but when there is compendial criteria, then yes, we can.
Okay, Ayman? Question is here. Ayman was bringing the mic. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, great presentation for both presenters. Thank you very much for highlighting this topic. I'll go back to Nelson Lab first. It's fascinating the activities that you do aside from running the Nelson Lab. This is great. I have two questions, too short for you. First, I've seen how your relation with Amy and ANSI, it seems that you're sitting in the technical committees for standards, which is great. So my question to you, have you had an incident where you have to run a test against no standards? Number one. Number two, what's the importance of standards in relation to lab testing? Can you highlight the importance of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. As a business owner, there are costs to be associated with some of these organizations. AMI, ANSI, ASTM. In fact, they're as close to a pyramid scheme as I've ever seen, because you pay to have your people go and participate. You pay for their travel. You're usually paying for their work time. And then when the standard is all prepared, you buy the standard from that same organization. So it's kind of amazing. And early in my career, I had concerns about that. I had concerns about how expensive that was to send people to the committee meetings. But I've really come around on that, because you get so much value as a company by having your people there to understand exactly what's being discussed about the standards. You get a lot of very effective conversations with the people who are either the committee chairs or even the regulators, FDA, and those of you who participate with those standards committees. That understanding is priceless, because that allows us, when we're talking with a customer, we're able to not only tell them what the current expectation of the standard is, but we can also talk about, okay, here's where the standard's going tomorrow, and here's what the new expectation will be. As to your second question, which was, can we do testing without a standard? Yes, and we do that all the time. There are situations that require unique protocol development, and we will design tests for customers to address a particular parameter. But in that case, just like the previous question, we aren't able to definitively say if it's a pass or fail test. We can report the results, and then the manufacturer would have to make a determination about how that result is interpreted relative to the benefits and risks of their product. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, I have one. Okay, we have one here at the back. Thank you.
This is Engineer Nader from Bahrain. Actually, the concept of reprocessing is really new for us. In Bahrain, we do not consider reprocessing. A single-use device is a single-use device, and then it should be disposed. And to see that Saudi Arabia is implementing this, it's something that we need to discuss further, I think. But I have a question about disposal of medical devices. Just if you can just brief us, what are the standards or protocols that you follow in Saudi Arabia or internationally even for medical devices disposals?
Yeah. So I will say my experience, I don't know exactly how that's handled on the hospital side, but I know from my interactions with the manufacturers that we do testing for that they're very careful about disposal. First of all, you have to realize oftentimes when you finish doing a test, the product is in not a very good state. It's been exposed to fluids, it may be cut up or damaged. Even then, the manufacturer is so concerned about the potential risk of someone learning their technology that they'll ask that we destroy it further. I know that a lot of disposal happens via biodisposal or by contaminated waste disposal, and that's a very typical practice. A lot of times in those situations, that waste is being incinerated as well. That's been my experience.
I don't know if Kamil, what you want to comment, because let me, before Kamil comments, say that it's a good chance to promote one of WHO courses on health technology management overall that includes at the end a very specific presentation on waste disposal. And Kamil used to give that presentation in many of our, we've visited 6-7 countries that we've promoted this course. It's a full-fledged course from regulation up to, so Kamil, do you want to comment, or do you want me to intervene about the different classes and types of disposals, and you want to do that?
Maybe just quickly to say that this is actually a very challenging procedure when it comes to disposal of or waste medical devices. It depends actually on the type. I mean, as you know, majority of the waste is unharmful, but you still have a percentage which is harmful. And this is the problem, that if those mix together, then you have to, have a particular strategy or plan how to control all those kind of waste. So some countries use kind of incinerators. It depends on the type. So some countries can go into incinerators, some goes to shredding. So it depends on the practice that you are doing in your country. So you should have kind of infection control committee. They look into those kind of type of waste, and then they put recommendation depending on the waste, what mechanism or procedure you want to handle. If you talk about medical device as medical equipment, so definitely, it varies. If you have lab equipment, where then you have contaminated with blood, so you need to make sure that those are decontaminated and to ensure that they are the component which you can have blood inside to be taken out could be somewhere buried, some place which was clear instruction that those it's far away from the city and could be guarded somewhere buried under the ground. And the metal things, you can sell it. It depends on the policy you have if you can sell those types.
Are there any
kind of practices, you mean?
Guidance? Standards or guidelines that we can refer to?
Not really. I'm not sure.
There are concerning cancerous equipment, cobalt-containing equipment. There are, and it's usually with the Ministry of Environment.
But sometimes even you can go back to the manufacturer and request for kind of information. Sometimes they give guidance on that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Nazir, can we bring the mic here? Thank you.
Regarding single-use device, our SFDA recommendation is that if it's a single-use device, it's a single-use device. It should not be used again. This is what we recommend, and this is what we are advancing. The numbers over here show that some health facilities and some health institutes do not abide with that. But that goes against our recommendation. And I think this is a worldwide practice that is happening. You tell the health facility, do not reuse, but they will still reuse it. That's a challenge we face. Regarding the disposal, it depends on what type of devices we have. In the kingdom, it's with the Ministry of Environment. There are several companies, private companies that are certified by the Ministry of environment, and all hospitals are required to subcontract the disposal of medical equipment, medical devices, I should say, accessories through that company. If it comes to radioactive material, all importers must export this radioactive material back to the factory where it came from. And this is done through the Ministry of Interior with collaboration with us at the Saudi FDA. We are enforcing that, and last week we caught a storage area with more than 1,215 radioactive source in the storage area with other medical devices and equipment, with the surgical tools. They are all together in the same storage facility, 1,215 radioactive source. And the file now is with the Ministry of Interior. The Crown Prince is personally handling that company. God help them. So there is something, and we are hoping in Saudi FDA to also one of the future things to do is to move in the life cycle of a device to issue at least a guidance, as we are trying to issue a guidance for medical device management. We are going to hopefully issue a guidance on the proper disposal of medical devices. But it's going to be just a guidance. It's not going to be enforced soon.
Z, any more questions? Go ahead.
Just one comment about the presence of a standard for disposal of medical devices. From my experience in the standard committees, yes, we have, and as most of you have answered the lady, according to the product, there is a standard. For instance, for the ISO 84, which is the administration of catheters, there is a sharp needles, and for that standard, there is a testing method, then there is a disposal recommendation how to do it. So this is applicable to, as I believe, to all other devices. It depends on the type of the device.
Okay, if no more questions, I have one on my own that I kept at the very end, and it concerns the slide that you see on the screen. If you go through the numbers, I have two questions and maybe remarks on the results. The first thing is that the reprocessing and reuse of the single-use devices is more in government entities than private facilities. And if you look at that, and this actually sums up the conditions we have in our part of the world. If you look, usually when a patient is sick, he prefers to go to private facility over public, even if he's insured. Sometimes, if he can afford it, he would go to the private. Maybe because these practices are around, I don't know. But this is one. But within the group, and this was more even alarming to me, and I need your comments on it, within the group of the government facilities, the primary healthcare centers are the least. They are even the least of all the groups. So I would have imagined that, out of, because these people are living in primary healthcare centers, usually in remote places, they don't have access maybe to continuous supplies, so they might be doing it more than others. But it turned out to be the other way around, that hospitals and government facilities, maybe in urban areas, are doing it more than the ones in the rural parts. So I need your take on those two, private versus public, and within the public, why the PHC centers are more.
I think this is also, okay. The first question is regarding why the percentage of reprocessing in private is less than in the public. I think maybe they were because this is what we think, because they calculate the real cost for the reprocessing. So maybe they find that it's more than to purchase the new one. This is maybe the reason. Also, maybe maybe some of them they didn't give us the real feedback. Maybe they doing more than the public, but they didn't inform us. Maybe, and also some of the primary health care because they don't have they can do the reprocessing as a reprocessing. I mean cleaning, disinfection, sterilization, repackaging, relabeling, because they don't have to go in that, so they don't want to damage their reputation. So maybe they didn't go there. So I think one of that reason, this is why the percentage is less than. Regarding the primary healthcare center, we think because they don't have any tools or they don't have any equipment to reprocess, so they just use what they have. This is what I think.
Okay, no more questions. I ask you all to give a round of applause to our two speakers. Thank you. And I would invite them back to their seats because we're having the closing session. May I invite, we're half an hour early than the coffee break. I think we can use that in closing the whole session so that you can have your coffee and just leave us, bearing in mind that the people who signed for the social activity today, please be at the reception at 5:45. There's a bus waiting for us to go there. Those who are interested, please, we still have places in the bus to take us there. We're going to the museum, right? And therefore, if you're interested, we'll be more than happy that if you can join us at 5:45. Now, may I call for Dr. Nazih, Dr. Martha Everard to join me here for the closing of the meeting. And oops. Take care. Are you okay? Are you okay?
That's where I'm not used to.
Ah, she's an athlete. Come on, have a seat.
Put this from here.
Yeah. Have a seat. Are you okay? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay.
I stepped on my seat.
Since, as you all remember, last day, yesterday, which seems like a long time ago, you had 18 presentations, which is, to me, a record. And you're still living and nothing happened to you. SFDA opened the meeting, so I guess WHO can close it. But so that you have your final words as SFDA, and then Dr. Martha, I'll hand it.
No, ladies first.
Really?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Then I'll ask Martha to say a few words what's the take of the first 2 days of this open session, and then I give the final word to Dr. Nazih.
Well, thank you very much, all the dear friends of Saudi FDA. It was a fantastic event, I must say. I enjoyed it tremendously as a presenter, as a chair, and even as a participant. It is a very informative and very, what can we say, cutting-edge issues that some of our member states are here for and have listened very carefully. I picked up some of the remarks. Everybody was very happy and was also very happy that the Saudi FDA is taking the lead and can demonstrate, and also in the coming 2 days will be very helpful to see how they do certain activities and certain processes. So this is a very unique meeting, I must say. This is a very interesting stakeholder meeting. Yeah, we have the industry, we have people as regulators, we have WHO as a convener, we have one of the countries that is a center of excellence, if I may say so. So we have a very interesting mix of stakeholders sitting here together, and really I think that that made this meeting a specific and very special one. Therefore, I'm not sure if I have to, but I will thank everybody who has participated in this event and has contributed with knowledge, skills, and laughter, so to say, and jokes, that this is the way of working, and that this is maybe the new way of working, that we have to work together in networks and being open and honest and sharing information. I think this is the take-home message from all of us. And I speak also specifically to countries that may have not opened so much and have asked questions like Somalia. But I think the Somali colleagues have very carefully listened, because for them it is a new area of work, and it is also for them an opportunity to see how quickly they can start doing some things, start small, and then walk the steps that has been given to all of us here. And definitely also, if I may say so, Afghanistan, Pakistan, I think you countries, you have a very good opportunity. You can learn from the experience already made, and you can pick up the best pieces of the cake, so to say, and do especially the same. Start small and then grow, because you have the vision and you have the mission. And specifically for these countries, I think the Saudi FDA has really been a good example, a gold standard. And I cannot thank you more than what I can do now. And I look forward to the coming 2 days, what will be a closed session. Thank you.
Of course, I echo everything that Martha said, and now I give the word to Dr. Nazir.
طيب ما شاء الله تبارك الله بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Alhamdulillah, we had 2 busy days with a lot of presentations, a lot of wisdom shared from all sides. Deep appreciation to WHO for their trust and their cooperation and collaboration in actually being the driving force behind this conference. We began the meetings a couple of months ago to organize this program, and alhamdulillah it was a success with your presence and your participation. We have been working at Saudi FDA, receiving tremendous support from the leadership of this country, alhamdulillah. Dr. Mohammed Al-Mish'al is also providing a lot of support to the medical devices sector. And this conference is one of the outcomes of the continuous effort exerted by the staff of Saudi FDA, who I commend them for all their effort. The many countries are coming here, getting together, using your work as a model to hopefully implement it in their own countries and elsewhere. We have guests from 13 countries. We are very happy to have you over here. Saudi Arabia is your second home. And we look forward for having you tomorrow in closed sessions, where we will share further details, further information. Please feel free to ask any question you want, any document you would like to see, any guidances we have issued. You have the CD. If you have anything specific, we will be happy to share with you as much as we can. There are just few recommendations from our side for discussion. If you have any comments about them, or you think you may add few things or few words to them, please, we would love to hear your voice. We encourage cooperation between all responsible regulatory authorities for medical devices in the region to ensure the exchange of information and benefit from experience from leading countries in the field. If any country would like to start somehow, let's say, splitting the cake, we do the pre-market, they do the post-market, we'll be happy to collaborate in that direction. We urge, just come forward, feel forward. We don't want to advance ourselves on you, as they say, but our skills are available. We are going in the same boat together. So this is something we will be very happy to share with, and we hope that even the WHO we'd look at Saudi FDA as the center of excellence in the region, and we would be willing to share our experience anytime, anywhere with any country in the region or elsewhere. We will be very happy to do so. Promoting community awareness regarding the safe and optimum use of medical devices is something I think came out in many presentations where we are doing regulations, people are unaware of them. We still have companies bringing devices on borders saying, oops, am I supposed to be registered? What is MIDMA? What is SFDA? Do you have regulations? We still have that, and we need to work on that. We need to also work on increasing community awareness towards safe usage of medical devices, whether home used or within the hospital environment, especially when it comes to medical device management. We encourage health technology assessment and management activities to ensure safe and appropriate use of medical devices by activation the clinical engineering roles and all other related parties in the healthcare organizations. We still suffer having biomedical engineers marginalized, not included in decision-making processes in hospital facilities, and this is causing problems that escalate later on at the late stage, even within some companies. I have to say that we face that very often. That the people who are applying for MIDMA, applying for market authorization, are not qualified. They don't know what is the meaning of a technical specification, or what is the meaning of this, or what is the meaning of that. They are not aware of what's going on, and they face a lot of difficulties in fulfilling the requirements. So we urge utilization of biomed engineers and specialists who are at least trained in the medical devices sector to work in, whether in health facilities or even as regulators in companies. We encourage healthcare facilities to have electronic records for medical device and services to facilitate traceability of devices and health technology assessment. It would be a dream come true if we could connect our devices database with the databases available in hospitals. This way we will know every device where it exists, without the need of going to any company. We will know this device is at that hospital. But if hospitals do not believe that they are supposed to list their devices and list their equipment, then we have a challenge. So this is something we have to work together to achieve. Hospitals need to include regulatory affair regulations in their specifications. Hospitals, we recommend that they only purchase from companies that have medical devices establishment license, purchase devices that have market authorization, and this to be part of their tendering process, to exclude all parties that are working without any permits or licenses. There are many other small recommendations, but I don't want to take much of your time. This is what we have in mind so far. Please let us know if you have any questions. Finally, I would like to thank WHO again, the organizing committee, all the people who helped in one way or another, all the speakers who came from all around the world to share their experience. We learned a lot. We have all the videos. These videos are going to be uploaded hopefully by Thursday in our YouTube channel. They will be available for free anytime. Thank you for the industry that was here. MECOMID showed good support to this event, and they came in good numbers, sharing their ideas, sharing speakers, and that's something regulators, we need to listen. Whether we listen carefully or we don't, that's a different story, but we have to listen to the industry and try our best to accommodate what we can in one way or another. We are working for a safe product, an efficient product in the market. We have two different angles to look at the same issue, but we are in the same boat eventually. Thank you all, and inshallah we look forward for having you in future events and having our guests tomorrow in our SFDA. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for the Saudi FDA and for WHO for hosting this event, and also for all other who contributed. As I said, this is the end of the open session. Tomorrow, all our participants will meet 6:45 sorry, 7:45, 7:45 at the reception downstairs in the morning, because the bus leaves at 8. And today, if you're interested in joining us to the museum and dinner, and then please wait for us at the reception at 5:45. 5:45 downstairs at the lobby, because there's also a bus coming to pick us up and go to the museum, and afterwards there's dinner. So yeah, the open meeting is adjourned. See you in other events.